military population.
And welcome to America's Heroes Group, our roundtable with our partner, the Veterans Legislative Voice, and our AHG correspondent with Stephanie Kalota. Today is Saturday, July 15th, 2023. July is American Diabetes and National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. Our host is Kelley, you heard at the top of the hour. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scout Arnold Productions. And once again, the familiar voice you've heard before, Stephanie Kalota, U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class. She's a veteran and the founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice, and she is our AHG correspondent. We're going to talk about what Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama doesn't want you to know about his protest against the military's quote-unquote woke policies. So, Stephanie, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Before we get into this discussion, we've had this discussion a little bit before in the past. I want to kind of get what is Mr. Tuberville's definition of wokeness? What is his definition of wokeness? And kind of give a teaser and a spoiler alert for this conversation. The conversation we're really going to be having today is really about distance, rape, and staying alive.
Yep. And honestly, to me, anything that he has been calling woke, at least, is just something that he doesn't agree with. And it doesn't seem like there's any consistency of any of those things. I mean, this week he had a real hard time actually calling white nationalists racists. And he said that they should be in the military. So he's been having a little bit of trouble defining things lately this week. So we'll see how this goes with him.
So before the Supreme Court decision that was made recently, which basically overturned Roe versus Wade, there was what's called in the military the Hyde Amendment, which basically kind of regulated how abortion was conducted under the military guidelines. What were the Hyde Amendment guidelines, and how did the Supreme Court decision change those guidelines?
So, I mean, there wasn't so much of a change that really happened from the Supreme Court and the guidelines. What kind of changes how we look at the Hyde Amendment, including everything else, I guess, is more of how I would word it. The Hyde Amendment was originally enacted in 1977. So it's an older bill, older law that happened actually probably in response to Roe v. Wade, because that happened a few years prior. And what it was is to restrict federal funding to cover for abortion services. So it has basically, they put in that stipulation for federal funding can't touch it or help or assist. And that's probably why some of those crisis centers out there request or ask for donations, because that could help them along with trying to cover all the other funding that they also provide for the other services. But the Hyde Amendment has changed a little bit since then. Right now, it still says that federal funding cannot be used for abortion services, which is what Senator Tuberville has been preaching. And the thing is that there's the exceptions included on the Hyde Amendment that basically says that they could use federal funding for abortion services if the pregnancy was a result of rape, incest, or the pregnancy is causing a health risk towards the mother.
Now, the interesting thing about this is that we know we've talked about this for the many, many times in the past, that in the demographic for women in the military ages 18 to 24, there's a high propensity of sexual abuse, sexual assault, which oftentimes can lead into what you just described. If there's a pregnancy based on rape, then what happens now under the new laws, under what the Supreme Court have actually changed under Roe versus Wade, under the new version of what's happening today with abortion?
Well, really before the overturning of Roe v. Wade, because of the Dobbs decision, the military actually didn't cover that many abortions. It was only, I think, 14 in 2020, or even before that, 2020, because Dobbs happened in the last year. So in 2020, only 14 abortions were even performed in the country, in the U.S. military. So it wasn't really that high. That also means that the women service members either didn't go to their own military hospitals for the abortion services, or they went outside because they were turned away. We'll never know, but just having that idea put out there for everybody. And so when the Dobbs decision leaked, before it actually overturned Roe v. Wade, two of the services, the Army and the Air Force, actually removed the commander's ability to deny leave to receive an abortion in order to ensure that the service members can take care of themselves medically. For those that don't know, service members can't technically, active duty ones, cannot technically travel outside of their duty location outside 400 miles. It might change depending on the location, but they can't leave that far. And if you do, you can get in serious trouble.
Very serious trouble.
Also, or the thing is that when an abortion is performed, you need recovery time. Depending on the type you need, the complications involved, a woman really needs to be in bed rest at least 24, 48 hours. They don't often get that, even the women on the civilian side, but just having that much time of rest in the beginning is really recommended. So the leave is really important. One of the things is that they took the commander's ability to deny this leave because they recognized it as a medical issue, because doctors can actually write convalescent leave.
And once again, we're talking about cases where it's really rape or some kind of kind of violence, or the life of the mother is being threatened. So abortion, just in any case, was never acceptable, from what I understand, under the military guidelines. But for rape and for when the mother's life was in danger, then these were the cases that the doctors would approve, having an abortion. Yes.
Yeah. And so the discussion's been coming up, and actually after the Dobbs decision, the military decided that they will cover the travel expenses for an abortion if they meet those exceptions of the Hyde Amendment. And that's because 40% of the U.S. military, the women in the U.S. military, at the last time they did that survey, 40% were in states that had 6-week bans or less, and could not get, had very difficult ways to get an abortion, even with the exceptions that even the state had. Because you got to think about it, the military only did 14 abortions. I can only imagine so many people that are qualified to provide those.
Right, in these states, so then they can't travel, or can they travel now? Or is that still an issue?
They can still travel. What Senator Tuberville is protesting is for this law to go, or this policy to go away. And so he's holding up military promotions. And these military promotions are for generals and command positions and things. So there's a lot of positions sitting vacant, or a lot of people in acting positions that can be a little bit of a gray area. General Mealy is going to be retiring soon. He's going to be stepping away at Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. This protest is going to include his replacement.
My concern is that, okay, so if a woman gets raped in the military, she gets pregnant, and maybe it's a double whammy. She's pregnant, and she's also, like in your case, we talked about this before, your personal situation, that your life would be in danger if you had a child.
Yeah.
But you have no recourse but to suffer death.
That's what some say. In the state of Texas, they have the 6-week ban, but they still technically have the exceptions for health and risk of the mother, rape, and what have you. The thing is that because of the very strict criminal penalties towards a medical provider that performs those abortions, they're too afraid to perform it, even if the mothers meet qualifications. And so there's a lawsuit going on now. Last month, 5 women and 2 doctors filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas. And since then, 8 more women has joined them. A few of these women almost died, and some of them have actually became infertile because the abortions were not performed. They had such a health risk that it permanently damaged them, which is what the military and the VA is also counting, is whether the health of the mother overall is going to be in danger as well, not just her life, but any possible permanent injury to it.
And people have different sides to the issue. Some people are very concerned about abortion because they don't realize, or they feel that in their perspective that it might be killing a child. which I can understand from that perspective. And some people say, well, it's my body, my privacy, my right to do what I need to do with my body. In this particular case, though, we are going to this very, very narrow percentage of women who are in a situation where it's rape or incest, or rape in this case, and the life or the life of the mother is at risk. So in these cases where the women almost died in these cases, I mean, we know that more than likely those children didn't survive either, if you believe that those are actual children that were trying to be brought to term or could have been brought to term.
Yep. And that's a good point. And the thing is that the military is still going by the Hyde Amendment exceptions. They're just providing travel expenses. The military provides travel expenses for majority of medical services that a service member or their family cannot receive in their assigned duty location. They will provide travel expenses to go where they can get those services. So this is just something that they've already have been doing for medical expenses.
So going back to this question of what's quote unquote woke, so as Tuberville says, this is a woke attack on America, I guess, or the military. So I remember The Matrix with Keanu Reeves. That whole movie was basically about woke, what we call today, what black people invented the word woke, which is really just a continuation of black consciousness. Really, the word really just truly really ever meant was just being awake. When I was in college and high school, we call it knowing what time it is. They would say, you know what time it is? That was the call phrase that Public Enemy and people like that would say to say, okay, do you know what's going on? Are you aware of how things are connected? Connecting the dots of power, of success, of how decisions are made in your environment. That's where the all woke meant. Now, people have taken that in today's society and they've kind of appropriated it in a whole lot of different ways. So today it's kind of a meme of itself. Nobody really knows what woke really is anymore in reality.
It's a weaponization of the word, which is frustrating because the word basically means the alertness of prejudice and discrimination. Now it's actually being used for means of racist and prejudice. It's really frustrating, and it's a weird thing to be into. I'm sure my old logistics professor is just going absolutely crazy right now, based off of that. And the thing is that when Senator Tuberville and some other politicians use woke as a reason to fight for something, they don't explain what they're really fighting against or fighting for. When I've seen these articles that cover this very subject, they don't actually talk about the exceptions to the Hyde Amendment and whether or not it goes that far or they are breaking the law or whether it's woke. So when I've asked people who are like, damn, yeah, the military is going woke, this is so terrible, they're weak, I'm like, wait a second. Does that mean you're against providing abortions for people that have been raped, incest, or the health or risk of the mother? They're like, no, I'm okay with that. They don't realize what's really being argued about right here. A lot of people hear that catchphrase and it turns on this anger, and it's so crazy of how the reaction can come with it. And I just want to make sure that a lot of people can just start reading and researching into things instead of jumping into it without actually understanding what's going on.
The crazy part about it is I'm not sure if I even know a black person even uses the word woke today at all. Because it's actually like an old school. It's not even in vogue anymore to even say woke. Woke was like the next iteration of what time it is, or black consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. Something else will come around. The only people that are using woke are people that don't even know what the word means.
Yeah, and I've seen the change in it, and a lot of people that are technically woke avoid using the word. It's just like when BLM happened and a lot of the other protests. When many people started to really do protests over other things as well, they stopped using the word protest because it's been so associated with the riots and the police violence and everything like that. We've actually had to change a lot of the stuff because I was part of everything that was going on for Vanessa Guillen. We had to change the wording to rally, so then it would be separated. And people don't automatically think of the violence that's been going on with the protests in 2020.
Wow. It's amazing how words can be weaponized and used as a rallying call, because this is what the Secretary of the U.S. Army said. Christine Wormuth said on MSNBC on the Morning Joe show. She said, and I quote, "We are not a woke army. We are a ready army." And she also said that the constant drumbeat that we hear sometimes about weak military, a woke military, is a bit of a negative drip, drip, drip that is undermining our recruiting at the time that we really can't afford that. So, and even Senator Tuberville, he said the exact same thing. He's basically blaming woke culture, to saying that's why the military is having a hard time recruiting. The military can't recruit because woke culture is this destroy the military. Senator Chip Roy of Texas got in front of Congress and actually said that during Pride Month last month, the U.S. Marines had made a tweet using the little emojis for rainbow tip bullets. So they were like bullets, but they were like in rainbows. So he said, we would like to make the military focus on killing people and blowing stuff up again, because that's what the military is supposed to be for. That's what he said, is quote for quote. And also, but he said, to give him some credit, sparingly used though, not endless wars, but ready and able. But blowing stuff up and killing people as the only tool that the military is good for, not the stuff that we actually do every day in the military.
Or the other things that we've done for other countries. I mean, I know people that were in the engineers, because I used to work for the engineers. High 416th, by the way, in Darien, near you guys. People have gone to other countries to build things, build hospitals, schools, runways, and they're U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. There's a lot of really cool things that the military can do for others. I mean, hell, the military, all the reserve and guard that stepped up for Katrina, I mean, that was amazing. I got called up for that, too. So those type of things. And, I mean, you touched on recruiting. The RAND Corporation, which is basically the data monster of everything that really looks at all the data and stuff, they found that there's a frustration with family planning, quote, in a quote, in the context of military career and gender bias, and discrimination often are cited as reasons for the separation. Women are the highest demographic of attrition. They are female, aged 18 to 24, at the rank of E4 and below. And guess what is the most common demographic for that, too? The MST victims, military sexual assault victims, as well.
That makes a lot of sense, though.
Yes, you got to look into things. You and I were talking about something from something else, and it quoted that there's an issue with the women being in combat positions, and the person quoted the sexual assault reports to increase. Well, we actually want the reporting to increase, because you got to look at it in comparison to the prevalence, the estimated prevalence of the assaults actually happening. You want more people to report. And at the times that those reports increased, that's when actually the prevalence decreased. So there was actually a good move happening around there. So that's something that the military really have to keep on top of. That during that time, they were really on top of military sexual assault and trying to change things. But then that became less the focus, and then they just stopped really caring about it from there. And of course, it jumped up to almost 36,000 in 2021.
My prediction is that this will be something that really kind of disrupts and kind of hurts the Republican Party, unfortunately, and to some extent, because we do need discourse, we do need honest discussion about what's real and what actually can solve problems here in this country, particularly for our military and people that serve the military, and particularly when it comes to benefits for those who have fought and served this country. And by just using this random terminology they're trying to appropriate or misappropriate just to try to get people to latch onto it, when half the people you're speaking to don't even know what you're talking about. Most people who are conservative have no idea what woke means. They're listening to their leaders talking about woke this, woke that, and they have no clue what the hell what that means.
And you guys have questions? Call me, talk to me, Veterans Legislative Voice, Google that. Find me on Facebook, message me. I will respond. If you guys have questions, I can explain it.
Stumpy Kalota, thanks for your time. U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class, veteran, and founder of the Veterans Legislative Voice. Check out her website, the Veterans Legislative Voice. Keep in touch, and also make sure that you let us know what you think about our conversations. We're on YouTube right now, also Facebook. Like, subscribe, but also make sure you reach out and communicate with us. We'll be right back.